Hey everyone, welcome back to your nerdy show. I'm your host Spoiler Master. Today, we are taking a deep, terrifying dive into one of the most iconic modern horror universes ever created, the Insidious franchise. Now, if you're like me, you've probably spent way too many nights sleeping with the lights on after watching these movies. Between the ominous violin screeches, the pitch-black void of the further, and the nightmare-fuel character designs, Blumhouse really mastered the art of pure, unadulterated dread. But what makes this series truly stand out isn't just the jump scares. It's the horrifying, tragic, and downright bizarre lore behind the entities that live on the other side. Today, we are breaking down every single major entity across the Insidious movies. We're talking origin stories, terrifying abilities, how they haunt their victims, and how our favorite psychic, Elise Rainier, deals with them. Plus, we've got some absolutely insane updates on the newest monster set to rule the franchise. So, grab your popcorn, turn down the lights, if you dare, and let's step into the further. The lipstick-faced demon, the red-faced demon. Let's kick things off with the big bad himself, the poster boy of the entire franchise, the lipstick-faced demon. Also known as the red-faced demon, this guy is responsible for starting the absolute nightmare that the Lambert family had to endure. We first get a hint of his presence in the original Insidious through one of the most effective, simple jump scares in horror history. Renai is just walking around the house holding the baby monitor, listening to normal baby noises, when suddenly, this distorted, horrific voice cuts through the static saying, "I want it now." That chill down your spine? Yeah, that was him. See, Dalton Lambert isn't just a regular kid who goes to sleep and dreams. Dalton is a ridiculously gifted astral projector. But because he's just a little boy, he thinks his out-of-body experiences are just cool, vivid dreams. He doesn't have any fear, which leads him to wander way too deep into the dark corners of the further. And that's where the lipstick-faced demon was waiting. The demon snatches Dalton's soul and chains him up in his twisted little lair. And while Dalton's physical body lies in an unexplained coma in the real world, his empty vessel is basically a shiny new sports car parked on the street with the keys still in the ignition, just waiting for a demon to jump in and take it for a joyride. When we finally get a look inside the demon's lair, it's one of the weirdest scenes in the entire franchise. Josh Lambert travels into the further to save his son and finds the demon sharpening his long, metallic claws on a whetstone, while listening to Tiny Tim's Tiptoe Through the Tulips playing on a bronze phonograph. It is creepy, eccentric, and totally unsettling. Josh manages to unchain Dalton and race back to the physical world just in time, leaving the demon locked out. But this guy does not give up easily. Throughout the series, he keeps popping up. At the end of Insidious, Chapter 2, when Elise is investigating another case, she hears a signature creaking sound in the shadows, hinting he's still lurking. In Insidious, Chapter 3, which is a prequel, he terrorizes Elise at the very end of the movie right after she comes home from an investigation, appearing right behind her shoulder out of nowhere. He makes his grand, sinister return in Insidious, The Red Door. 10 years after the original haunting, Dalton is at art school, trying to tap into his subconscious. As he paints a mysterious red door, the demon's ink black, clawed hand bursts straight through the canvas, slicing Dalton's real-world hand. Eventually, the demon manages to fully possess Dalton again to go on a bloody rampage. It takes both Josh and Dalton working together. Josh physically holding the red door shut in the further while Dalton paints over the canvas in the real world with black paint, to finally seal the lair and lock the red-faced demon away once and for all. The Bride in Black, Parker Crane. Next up is arguably the most psychologically complex and tragic figure in the whole lore, the Bride in Black. To really understand why this entity is so terrifying, we have to talk about his human life. Before he was a terrifying phantom in a black funeral gown, he was a human boy named Parker Crane, born back in 1920 in California, and poor Parker never stood a chance. His mother, Michelle Crane, was an absolute monster. She despised Parker's father so much that she refused to let the boy use his real name, forcing him to go by Marilyn. Even worse, she hated that he was born male. She forced him to dress in girls' clothing, psychologically abused him, and brutally beat him whenever he showed any signs of masculinity. As Parker grew up under this horrific abuse, his mind completely fractured. To cope, His dark, homicidal impulses manifested as a mysterious elderly woman draped in a black funeral veil. He began dressing in this gown, using the disguise to lure young women into his home, murder them, and dump their bodies in a hidden room. Eventually, Parker tried to castrate himself to end his mother's control, ending up in the hospital. It was there, as a young boy named Josh Lambert was visiting his mother Lorraine at work, that Parker met Josh for the first time. Shortly after, Parker committed suicide by jumping off the hospital roof. But death didn't stop him. Parker's spirit went straight to the further, completely obsessed with getting a second chance at life. And who did he target? Young Josh Lambert. Lorraine began noticing a strange woman in black appearing in photographs of Josh. But here's the kicker. In every single photo taken over time, the woman was getting physically closer to the boy. Lorraine brought in psychic Elise Rainier, who realized Josh was an astral projector and suppressed his memories and abilities, effectively locking Parker out. Fast forward decades later, when Josh is forced to go into the further to rescue his son Dalton, Parker finally gets his revenge. He sneaks past Josh and steals his physical body. Back in the real world, Elise instantly senses something is wrong. She takes a flash photo of Josh, and the photo reveals Parker's twisted face. Realizing she's onto him, Parker physically strangles Elise to death before Josh can fight his way back. It takes a trip back into Parker's dark memories in Insidious, Chapter 2 for Elise's spirit and Josh to break Michelle Crane's hold over Parker, finally freeing Josh's body and ending the Bride in Black's reign of terror. The Woman in White, Michelle Crane. You can't talk about the Bride in Black without talking about the evil behind the evil, Michelle Crane, also known as the Woman in White. If Parker is the tragic executioner, Michelle is the puppet master who pulled the strings. Michelle makes her primary appearance as the main antagonist of Insidious, Chapter 2. While Parker was a serial killer, Michelle was the evil force driving his insanity. Even in death, her spirit haunts the further, completely maintaining her abusive grip over her son's soul. She first manifests to Dalton during his astral projections, creeping around his bedroom. Later, she viciously attacks Josh's wife, Renee, slapping her so hard across the face that it knocks her completely unconscious onto the living room floor. When Carl, Specs, and Tucker try to use spirit dice to contact Elise's ghost, Michelle intercepts the session. She poses as Elise, intentionally misleading the group and leading them straight into a lethal trap at her old abandoned mansion. There, she reveals her true identity through the dice, spelling out the Latin phrase Mater Mortis, which translates to Mother of Death. She then tries to crush Carl and Lorraine by dropping a massive crystal chandelier straight onto their heads. What makes Michelle so terrifying isn't just her aggression, it's her absolute refusal to let go of her control. Inside the further, we see memory loops of her forcing a young Parker to wear dresses and brutally striking him when he writes his real name on a drawing. She literally manufactured a serial killer out of her own child. During the final climax of Chapter 2, as Michelle attempts to murder Josh's body once and for all, the spirit of Elise steps in. Elise takes a wooden rocking horse from Parker's childhood memory and repeatedly beats Michelle with it, shattering her supernatural hold over Parker. With her spirit broken, Michelle is dragged out of the further and presumably cast down into hell, finally allowing Parker's victimized soul to rest. The Wheezing Demon, the Man Who Can't Breathe. Moving on to Insidious, Chapter 3, we meet one of the most physically repulsive entities in the franchise, the Man Who Can't Breathe, widely known as the Wheezing Demon. This entity is the primary antagonist of the third film, and his entire vibe is just pure decay and isolation. He wears a filthy hospital gown, has an oxygen mask strapped to his face, and leaves wet, slimy footprints everywhere he walks. Every step he takes is accompanied by this sickening, raspy wheezing noise that lets you know he's near. His origin in the story begins when a teenage girl named Quinn Brenner attempts to contact her recently deceased mother, Lilith. But in the world of Insidious, trying to reach out to the dead without proper guidance is like shining a spotlight in a pitch-black forest. You don't always get who you're calling for. Instead of her mom, Quinn accidentally summons the Wheezing Demon. The demon becomes obsessed with Quinn. He doesn't just want to possess her. He wants to break her down piece by piece. He causes a horrific car accident that breaks both of Quinn's legs, leaving her completely bedridden, vulnerable, and unable to run away. From there, the psychological torment begins. He knocks on her walls, drags her out of bed, and slowly drains her soul into the further. Unlike the red-faced demon who wants to walk the earth again, the wheezing demon's main motivation is total isolation. He drives human souls to deep despair and suicide so he can drag them down into the darkest depths of the further and keep them trapped forever as his personal pets. He even tries to break Elisa's spirit. When Elise ventures into the further to save Quinn, the demon disguises himself as Elisa's late husband, Jack, who had previously died by suicide. The fake Jack tearfully begs Elise to kill herself so they can be together forever. For a second, it almost works. But Elise realizes the real Jack would never ask her to harm herself. She snaps out of it, attacks the demon, and stands her ground. In the climax, Quinn is trapped in the further, wrapped in half a face mask, rapidly fading. But back in the living world, her father Sean, Specs, Tucker, and Elise hold hands, sending Quinn their mental energy. The spirit of Quinn's actual mother, Lilith, appears to give her daughter the strength to fight back. Quinn turns around, grabs the respirator mask strapped to the wheezing demon's face, and violently rips it off. Deprived of his breath, the demon crumbles into nothingness, freeing all the souls he had stolen. Keyface, the key bearer. If you thought the wheezing demon was creepy, let's talk about the main monster from Insidious, the last key, Keyface. Keyface is an entity that is intimately tied to the tragic backstory of Elise Rainier herself. Visually, he is terrifying. He's tall, emaciated, has long key-shaped talons for fingers, and keyholes sunken into his throat and mouth. But what makes Keyface uniquely monstrous is his ability to feed on human hatred and control people's minds. The story goes back to the 1950s in Five Keys, New Mexico, where a young Elise lived with her abusive father, Gerald, and her mother, Audrey. Gerald was a brutal man who beat Elise whenever she mentioned seeing spirits. Keyface lived in the dark basement of their home, waiting for a psychic strong enough to open the physical and spiritual locks holding him back. One night, after Gerald locks Elise in the dark basement as punishment, Keyface uses a trick to manipulate Elise into unlocking a mysterious red door in the further. The moment she unlocks it, Keyface escapes. Her mother Audrey rushes downstairs to save her, but Keyface takes control of the situation and strangles Audrey to death using Elise's own spiritual energy as a conduit. From that moment on, Keyface parasitically attaches himself to Gerald Rainier's mind. He amplifies Gerald's inner anger and hatred, driving him to secretly kidnap local women, chain them up in the basement ventilation shafts, and murder them. Decades later, when a new owner moves into the house, Keyface does the exact same thing to him, continuing the cycle of abuse. Keyface doesn't just torture the body, he literally locks away your soul. When he attacks a victim, he uses his key finger to slice into their neck, locking their voice away so they can't scream for help, before dragging their spirit into his prison in the further. When Elise returns to her childhood home in 2010 to face her past, Keyface traps her spirit in his dungeon alongside the ghost of her abusive father. Keyface tries to force Elise to beat her father's spirit with a cane, attempting to feed on her hatred and corrupt her soul forever. Just as all hope seems lost, Elisa's niece Imogen enters the further, bringing a wooden whistle that once belonged to Elisa's brother. Elise blows the whistle, and the loving spirit of her mother, Audrey, answers the call. Audrey manifests in a burst of blinding light, grabbing Keyface and throwing him deep into the abyss, unlocking all the trapped souls and allowing Elise to finally heal from her childhood trauma. Cyrus, King of the Further. Now, let's talk about the absolute powerhouse looming on the horizon of the franchise, Cyrus, the main villain hyping up horror fans for Insidious, Out of the Further. Played by the incredible Sam Spruell, Cyrus is set up to completely change everything we know about how demons operate in this universe. Up until now, almost every major entity in Insidious, whether it's Keyface, the wheezing demon, or the red-faced demon, has been largely mute, relying on guttural roars, sinister glares, and theatrical violence. Cyrus flips the trope on its head. He is officially dubbed the King of the Further, and he is described as a grand, theatrical, Dracula-like figure with a dark, twisted, and deeply unsettling sense of humor. What makes Cyrus so inherently dangerous is his disarming charisma. He isn't just a mindless beast running at you in the dark. He actually talks to his victims. He uses psychological manipulation, dark sarcasm, and a terrifyingly refined charm to disarm people, breaking down their mental barriers before completely torturing them. Think of him like a dark, Shakespearean theater actor who happens to rule an army of lost souls. The premise of Out of the Further revolves around a young mother named Gemma, who possesses a rare, horrifying gift, the ability to physically pull spiritual entities out of the further and bring them into the living, material world permanently. And this is where the fan theories get crazy. In every previous movie, the threat was a living human getting trapped inside the further. Fans predict Cyrus is planning a complete reverse invasion. Armed with Gemma's ability, Cyrus doesn't just want to possess one body. He is orchestrating a mass migration of spirits into the real world, aiming to turn our living plane into a physical extension of his kingdom. Furthermore, trailers and teasers have already hinted at the return of classic legacy monsters like the doll girl and the lipstick-faced demon. Because Cyrus holds the title of king, theorists suspect these legendary monsters are no longer acting on their own. They are likely generals or foot soldiers operating under Cyrus's direct command. And as for his backstory, given his human-like psychology, sarcasm, and theatricality, horror analysts strongly believe Cyrus wasn't born a demon. Just like Parker Crane, he was likely a real-world monster, perhaps an ancient cult leader or a ruthless historical serial killer, who died, went to the further, and violently conquered the realm through sheer force of will.
When the dead rise, it'll be the end of the living.
The Doll Girl. While the primary villains take up most of the spotlight, the Insidious universe is filled with terrifying background entities that build out the eerie atmosphere of the further. One of the most unforgettable is the Doll Girl, introduced in the very first Insidious film. When Josh Lambert first steps into the further to look for Dalton, he walks through a dark, foggy, twisted version of his own house. As he moves through the hallway, he spots a woman in a wedding gown weeping, who quickly vanishes. But when he steps into the living room, things get truly bizarre. He finds a family standing in 1950s-style clothing, completely motionless like wax figures, smiling unnaturally. As Josh carefully walks past them into the adjoining dining room, he sees a young teenage girl sitting alone at the table, wearing a retro dress, holding a heavy, loaded vintage handgun. Josh tries to talk to her, asking who she is, but she stays totally silent, staring blankly ahead. Suddenly, 3 loud gunshots echo through the house. Josh spins around and runs back into the living room. The family members who were just standing there are now slumped over, shot dead in cold blood. And standing over them is the Doll Girl, holding the smoking gun, wearing an absolutely maniacal, sinister grin on her face. She isn't just a ghost. She is trapped in an eternal, horrific nightmare loop. She killed her entire family in life, and now, in the further, she and her victims are doomed to replay that brutal murder over and over for eternity. As Josh flees upstairs, the entire undead family appears one last time, smiling at him as if they find their eternal damnation entertaining. It's a chilling reminder that the further isn't just a place for demons. It's a purgatory for broken human souls. The long-haired fiend, the ghoul. Another classic entity that has lurked in the background across multiple movies is the long-haired fiend, sometimes referred to by fans in credits as the ghoul. This spirit looks like a tall, dirty man with long, unkempt black hair, wearing greasy clothes. He's essentially a violent, opportunistic predator roaming the dark corridors of the further, looking for any chance to cross over into the living world. We first see him in Insidious when Renai is walking past Dalton's bedroom. Out of the corner of her eye, she sees a strange figure pacing back and forth outside the window. He eventually slips into the room, disappearing seconds before Josh comes to check on the noise. Later in the film, when the lipstick-faced demon briefly takes control of Dalton's body during a seance, the long-haired fiend appears inside the house. He aggressively stalks Renai, creeping up behind her and attempting to assault her by licking her cheek before Elise forces the entities back. He acts as a physical guard near the lipstick-faced demon's lair. When Josh makes his way down the red hallway, the long-haired fiend attacks him, tackling him to the ground and trying to take over his physical body right then and there. It takes Elise shouting words of encouragement from the living world for Josh to summon the willpower to throw the fiend off and escape. He pops up again in Insidious, Chapter 2, lurking behind the curtains in the Lambert home, terrifying Renai and making the baby scream hysterically until Elise's spirit banishes him. He even makes a brief cameo in the closet at the end of Insidious, Chapter 3. He is the ultimate recurring pest of the further, always watching, always waiting for an unguarded door. The dark-haired woman. In Insidious, Chapter 2, we get a glimpse into the tragic aftermath of the Bride in Black's murder spree through an entity known simply as the dark-haired woman. During the events of the second movie, young Dalton is sleeping in his room when he hears a strange, muffled sound coming from a tin can toy phone connected to his brother Foster's bed. He puts the can to his ear, and through the static, he hears a woman's voice desperately weeping, repeating the words, "Help me, help me." Dalton calls out, and suddenly, a terrified, pale woman bursts out from under the bedsheets, screaming the words directly into his face as the surrounding sheets wrap around her body like a shroud. At first, it just feels like another classic Insidious jump scare. But as the story unfolds, we learn the disturbing context behind her appearance. She isn't a demon trying to harm Dalton. She is actually the spirit of one of Parker Crane's real-world murder victims. Her soul is trapped inside Parker's spiritual realm within the Further, forced to relive her final moments of panic and terror over and over again. Her desperate cries for help through the tin can phone were a genuine plea to the living world, showcasing how human victims of serial killers remain imprisoned by their killers even after death. The Dancing Boy. Finally, we have one of the creepiest, most surreal entities in the entire series, the Dancing Boy. Played by actor Ben Wolfe, the Dancing Boy is an entity that appears as a young child dressed in vintage, early 1900s clothing, complete with a flat cap, knickers, and suspenders. But despite looking like a child, his behavior is deeply unsettling. He makes his iconic debut in the first Insidious movie. Renai is home alone doing housework, listening to an old record player in the living room. As she moves from room to room, the camera catches the little boy standing completely still by the coat hangers, just outside her line of sight. Suddenly, the record player starts glitching and playing loudly on its own. Renai walks into the room, and viewers see the dancing boy skipping, spinning, and joyfully dancing to the cheerful 1920s music against the wall. When Renai walks over to inspect the room, he darts across the hallway and hides inside Dalton's closet. When Renai slowly opens the closet door, expecting to find a lost kid, the boy violently pops out, screaming with a distorted face before vanishing into thin air. He appears again later during Elisa's initial consultation session alongside the doll girl and the long-haired fiend, proving that he is one of the many spirits constantly tethered to the house's chaotic energy. He doesn't necessarily have a grand evil plan like Keyface or Cyrus, but his playful, mischievous demeanor mixed with horrific phantom scares represents everything that makes Insidious so iconic, taking something innocent, like a dancing child or a catchy tune, and twisting it into absolute nightmare fuel. Our nerdy thoughts. And there you have it, a full breakdown of every major entity haunting the Insidious universe. From tragic serial killers like Parker Crane to cosmic horrors like Keyface and upcoming warlords like Cyrus, the creators of this franchise have built one of the richest, scariest horror pantheons in cinema history. So, I gotta ask you guys, which of these entities scared you the most when you first watched the movies? Are you excited to see how Cyrus changes the lore in Insidious, out of the Further? Drop your thoughts, theories, and favorite jump scares in the comments below. I read as many as I can, and I love seeing what you guys think. If you enjoyed this breakdown, do me a huge favor. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring that notification bell so you never miss a deep dive into your favorite horror movies. Until next time, keep your doors locked, watch out for red light bulbs, and whatever you do, don't travel too far into your dreams. Take care, everyone.
No, what the heck, I'll laugh anyway.